In today's business world, change is the only constant, and mastering transformation is the ultimate key to success. Welcome to Shift and Thrive. I'm your host, Natalie Nathanson. Each week, we'll bring you conversations with CEOs who delve into how they successfully drove critical change in their organization. This show is sponsored by Magnitude Consulting, bringing you the thinking power of a growth consultancy and the getting it done power of a full-service B2B marketing agency. I am very excited to introduce today's guest. He is a data scientist turned operator who has led multiple full-scale company transformations in just a few short years since stepping into the CEO role in his current company. He's a growth-focused leader who helped evolve his organization from staffing to managed services and then from services to SaaS products. Within his first 2 years of joining the company, he helped them win their first 3 federal prime contracts, and he's now leading a strategic initiative into the commercial healthcare market. He's someone who believes opportunity favors the prepared, and that sometimes the most important deals happen outside the boardroom. He is the CEO of Global Commerce and Information, also known as Global CI. Sam Ziman, welcome to the show.
Hi, Natalie. Thank you so much for having me. Looking forward to talking with you.
Thank you. I am as well. And I know, as I mentioned in your introduction, that you have led multiple reinventions of your company in a relatively short period of time. And that one of the most significant ones was moving from a services-based model to building SaaS products. And I know very well, how big the implications are for that for an organization. So I'd love to unpack that with you, and really starting by having you taking us back to the moment of what prompted the move. Can you talk about that first, and then we'd love to dive in deeper.
Absolutely. So when I joined the company 6 years ago, we were a staffing firm for the federal government. Essentially, that was where our focus was. And the real question was, are we resilient? Right? We were winning work as subcontractors, but were we building something durable, or were we just busy? So what happens if, let's say a new political initiative starts changing work in the federal government, right? Like we're all seeing now. And I always say sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. I didn't see anything coming, but we were worried about resiliency, hyper-focused in one area, one specialty, and not spread across many agencies. So we started looking at what could we do next, right? What could we really build with all the experience and the people that worked within this company? And we found a lot of opportunity. So that's what led us to win those prime contracts, was telling our story as a service provider, not as a staffing firm. And how did all those hours of working in the federal government translate to us being able to do the work ourselves? And telling that story was definitely a learning curve for everyone, but it ended up going really well for us.
That's great. And then I know more recently you've made or are making the transition from services to SaaS products. Can you talk about what initially prompted that?
Yeah, so same thing. Are we resilient? Right? What's going to happen if everything hits the fan? What's Global CI going to do? And then we started doing the services. So then in the services discussion, we're talking to people and they say, oh, we built this and we built that. And I'm like, this stuff's really amazing. It's amazing on a scale, far outside of where it is, with a lot of value to a lot of people. And since one of our main missions is always to just help people be better and be better ourselves while providing something that has much greater value than its cost, we found some products that we had essentially developed in those environments, and we decided to take them commercial. And that was really a learning curve, right? Switching from a hyper transactional company to a product firm, which is, eat what you kill versus plant and harvest, right? And that that mindset took sharing a lot of the vision with everyone. What do we see this company in 5 years, 10 years? Um, and how do we justify, all these investments into this product where there isn't anyone paying for it at first, right? And that's the route we ended up taking. Um,
And were these products that were initially developed like for specific customer use cases, and that's where kind of the ideas came from to make it kind of more commercially available more broadly?
yeah, initially we were building them in a federal agency, and we saw that the location of the product sitting in the federal agency might not have been the best place for it, right? You kind of end up at the end of a process versus at the beginning of a problem, right? And what we really wanted to do was get out front. And how can we help it? And go and help the people that need this product, and then essentially relieve a lot of stress off of the federal agency itself. It doesn't in any way diminish the function of that agency or what it was doing. If anything, it makes it more critical. But if we can get out front of that problem, then we could streamline the whole process that by the time it got to them, they were really getting, more polished data information and a product that they could consume easier and move along easier, and just put less constraint on already constrained resources. So it moved the whole thing to be very seamless. It helped people, helped get them coverage, and returned a lot of value to our healthcare clients because we focus with hospitals mostly. And that's one of them. And then the other product was, the growth sector. One of the people that works with us is a former hospital CIO, and he just saw a ton of value in helping people identify the market that they work in and the services they provide, and whether or not they were doing the right thing at all. He sat through however many meetings in hospitals, and he said, I think we're doing it wrong. Um, and when he eventually left and came to us, he wanted to set it right, and he wanted to help change and evolve those visions for the leaders of those organizations to get them on the right track. You know, if you already have if money's getting tight and you have hospitals across the country, closing in record numbers, each decision is critical. So how do we show them and help them understand the world they're in better so that they can make better decisions?
I'm curious to learn a little bit more about kind of some of those changes that had to take place, because I know from the number of clients that we've worked with that have made that transition, right? There's cultural shifts for kind of the team to think differently. There's obviously more flexibility in services than there is in SaaS products, right? Where services you can kind of morph and kind of shape around the offering around kind of the needs of an individual client. And with SaaS, I know more of that work has to be done upfront. So curious to hear from you, like what were those big areas that needed to look different as you've been going through this?
So we're super lean, right? Buy-in is critical. Everyone is a decision maker in a small business. Everyone works in sales. Everyone is hands-on, right? And we all have tons of hats. So when I worked at Medtronic as an analyst there for a while, I'm going to leave the guy's name out because I can't remember what his last name was, but he had this idea um, that he learned and he shared with us called radical transparency. It's not a new idea, and even though it's called radical transparency, it's not a radical idea by any means. But it really resonated with me because especially at larger companies like Medtronic, where, it's a $32 billion company and there's so many moving parts, you don't always understand what's happening or why they're doing something. And it may seem nonsensical to you when you're, boots on the ground. But through that program, we got to see a much larger picture that was easier for us to consume and to execute on it and make sure that the decisions we were making aligned with that. So I really liked that. And, I took it even one step further to just be completely transparent with everyone in my company that's a contributor. Hey, this is really what we want to do. We think this is the right thing. but we need to understand, you're the SME. Am I off base? Did I miss the mark? How can I get back on? How can, you know, we change entirely to and entirely is exactly how we changed, moving from staffing to product. And what do we need to bring on? And it's always a relief when so many of the people you work with have ideas and have knowledge that they maybe weren't necessarily utilizing at that time, but that translated really well over here. And they shared that journey with us and what they thought we needed to do. And just showing them where we were trying to go made it easier to steer the ship. It was just more hands on deck, made less work for everyone. And we were able to move it, and the communication across the entire company all the time. And that's really part of it, all the time, talking daily, especially when you're fully remote. Because there was a study not long ago that said someone 50 feet away from you has the same rate of communication with you as someone in another state. It really only took 50 feet of separation to put everything remote. And when COVID hit, everybody went fully remote. We got rid of our offices. Most of our people were on site with clients when they needed to be anyway. So making sure that in that remote environment, that communication didn't break down, didn't lapse, and just stayed in front of people all the time, whether you were texting a group chat, hitting them all up on Teams, creating recurring meetings just to check in, whatever it was, just making sure everybody knew that we were all available. And if they had something on their mind, they could reach out to us, or because we had multiple touch points, they could just hold it for that, whatever was more convenient. And that really helped us stay on top of everything, just talking all the time and not letting that communication break down.
I think that's a sign of a strong culture and a dedicated team. And I know, especially, in times of change, which we talked about COVID, we know now like organizations are going through tremendous change and evolution with kind of AI and all of that. And I'm curious to hear if there were any kind of examples of anything that came up from the team, any surprises or anything that kind of pivoted or shifted your direction based on something you heard from the team.
Absolutely. What's the point of having subject matter experts if you don't listen to them, right? Um, I learned everything took a lot longer than I had hoped or thought. I think I'm more of a dreamer than anything else. So sometimes I'm sprinting in my head due to a lack of understanding of what it's going to take to get where we need to be. And I'm already ready for phase two. I envisioned phase one. I gave it to you guys. All right, when's phase two? And I had to listen and slow down and understand the lift and what it was going to take and what the people needed to get it done, and made sure that before anything else, that was provided for them, right? That servant leadership is really powerful. If your people are tired, go get them coffee. That title doesn't mean anything. If you drive it into the ground, you did nothing. So listen to your people. They know. They're in it way more than you are. Especially, I'm 35. So my company is just full of people with tons of experience. And I just need to hear what they have to say so that I don't get, you know, what I think is, around the corner is actually 2 years down the road. And that was a pretty good lesson to learn.
Yeah, I think you raise an interesting dynamic too, where as a leader, right, you need to be thinking a few steps ahead, right? And like you said, the product and kind of thinking of the phase two, but also like very much grounded in the present reality of the organization and not kind of running ahead when your team is still focused on delivering what they need to deliver every day and kind of working through the change and all of that. So sometimes easier said than done.
Yeah, and not creating undue stress on them, right? Because you're so far ahead in your mind and they have to be like, "Hey, man, relax. We got a lot of work to do before we get there." Um, and just being receptive for that, but you still need a dreamer and you need a doer. You need all of those things to work together to get where you're going.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And you're talking about, you alluded to your servant leadership style. I love the radical transparency that you brought in. Would love to hear just how you do describe your leadership style.
No matter how many times I hear that question, mm, I don't know if I've ever had a great answer. I think it's something better for someone else to answer, but I'll tell you what my goal was.
Perfect.
My goal is to almost be invisible. There's a saying by Lao Tzu that says, when the work is done and the dream fulfilled, the people will say we did it ourselves. And I think that that is probably the most important thing that I hope to be as a leader, is someone that gets everyone where they're going, and they 100% know that it was their time and energy and effort that got us there.
I think that's really beautiful. I share that kind of a viewpoint, and I think it's very important for the team to have pride in what they're doing day to day, what they're building. So I think that says a lot about you as a person. I'm curious if your leadership style has changed over the years.
Yeah. Yes. Mm, so even though I did go into data science, before that, I was a bicycle mechanic for a long time. And I had a lot of fun doing that. It was excellent. I think everyone should work in some kind of services industry growing up, because it helps you be grateful to the people around you and all the people that end up, serving you at some point, whether it's a restaurant, your car, something like that. Just go see that point of view, walk a miles in shoes. I walked many miles. And then, even though I had no idea what I was doing, when I graduated college, I really thought I did. And so then um, I walked around for about a whole year with my foot in my mouth. And there's lots of embarrassing, haunting stories that I have from that sometimes keep me awake at night for no reason. But really, it's about, learning that lesson, not wallowing in it or becoming mired in some of those things, and making sure you don't do it twice.
Hey, this is Natalie, your Shift and Thrive host. After chatting with lots of CEOs, one thing is crystal clear. Leveling up your company means having a killer go-to-market strategy. That's what my crew at Magnitude Consulting does every day. If you're trying to step up your marketing game, whether it's strategizing, accelerating your pipeline, expanding into new markets, or getting into AI and automation, let's talk. No pitch, no pressure, just good conversation. Visit shiftandthrivepodcast.com/Natalie to schedule a time. Can't wait to connect. I'm curious to follow up on something that you said when we spoke previously, right? That success is, when preparation meets opportunity, because I know a lot of your biggest wins didn't come through kind of more traditional structure or sales processes, but kind of being at the right place at the right time, so to speak. Um, but I think that's also, which says something about you. So I'm curious, like, how do you think about this? How do you position yourself so that these opportunities, so you're kind of opening the door for these opportunities?
I think one of the sayings that I love, and when I need to change something I'm doing, is you become what you study. If you want to be a car mechanic, you need to live and breathe and read and write and study and watch and consume as much as possible. It will saturate your way of thinking so that it becomes a second language. When we moved to services, I started learning and thinking like a services company, reading case studies. Case studies are such a huge help. People have already learned the lesson for you. You don't have to learn it the hard way. You're probably going to learn it no matter what, and you're going to feel that disappointment. But if you understand where you went wrong, then you don't have to learn it over and over and over again. So become what you study. Study what you need to be. We're going into products. It has been like drinking through a hose, learning the lingo. And the more specific your product gets, like a lot of ours are, and the more you work in the industry, you have to learn your industry. So you read the news about healthcare and hospitals, and you just keep learning about it. What makes them tick? What should make you tick? What should your product be hitting on that's going to bring value to these people? If you know something that keeps somebody up at night and you have a solution, that's what you need. And you need to speak their language.
I'm curious, what of these learning practices work best for you? Are there certain kind of rhythms or types of sources that you find most beneficial?
I love to read. I love to read. So find a book about what you do. Find it and read the reviews. Find an entertaining book because there's going to be a lot of brain drain before you even get the message as you learn the lingo, right? That's a big part of it. So I actually have one. I don't want to advertise someone else's stuff, but when we started getting into federal contracting, Dan Roche wrote a book called The Total Beginner's Handbook for Doing Business with the Government. Basically working with the government for dummies. And it's amazing. And it outlines what you need to do. And then when we started to go through transformation, I just have these all right here. This is not a pre-setup, I swear. One of the other ones was The Outliers, right? This is basically case studies by Warren Buffett and what made different companies different. They're not all relatable by any means, but the language in there is amazing. And the stories are really good. And the writing makes it enjoyable. So, you start picking up books that are what you need to be and learning about them and seeing what other people have already gone through and taking those lessons with you.
Yeah, I love that. Patrick Lencioni is one of my favorite business authors, and it's for the same reason, right? He writes them as stories, so you're not reading kind of a dense textbook, but
Mm.
you're really kind of learning through that, which is that case study approach. I'm curious, how much of this is just you versus others in your organization, and have you tried is to instill this kind of mindset in others on your team, or do you kind of let people do it on their own or not?
It's definitely a mix. Different people move at different paces, and you have to make room for all of them, especially at a lean company. They're all pivotal. But, being a 35-year-old CEO, you need to sit and listen to people that have been doing this twice as long as you have. And you need to listen, and your ego needs to go in the trash. You got to get rid of it. Otherwise, you're never going to hear what they're saying. And you always need to listen with the intent to hear, not to respond. And sometimes that's a conversation I have to have with my more technical people. They just tend to get really into the detail, and the conversation can get really pulled apart and away from the target of the conversation. And it's because they get way far down the line with the solution, um, past the point where they're necessarily they're not quite hearing the problem the same. And sometimes and on the other side of that, I might not be right. If I don't understand the solution enough, I might also miss it. So the truth of that is, in the middle is where we need to be, right? Far enough down the line where we're talking about the solution and right on track with where we need to get to the goal. So it's all about that open communication. Right? Nothing is all of one thing, especially not at my company. It's definitely a culmination of everybody's personality and experiences and know-how, and all of us working together to find the best way forward.
I think too, you're talking about kind of listening to truly hear versus kind of preparing your response, which I know can be tough. I think thinking about like meeting note takers and kind of using generative AI, think opens up a lot of new opportunities to do that. I know sometimes for me, like hearing a conversation that I was a part of gives me kind of a different lens through it, or putting it into kind of our corporate LLM and then hey, what did I miss? What did I not ask that I should have? So it's interesting to kind of have that, sparring partner, so to speak, like with yourself or like through technology that they can really help open up our minds and look in different directions like that. I want to hear a bit more about your company, and we're talked about some of your company's transformations, but what kind of transformations are your customers going through?
Absolutely. So the federal government is going through a lot right now. Um, a lot of hardship, uh, empty offices, same amount of work, fewer people, less resources to get the work done, tons of stress, and a lot of pressure. Everybody's watching you. Everything that happens directly affects us. That was one of the things that made me most proud about doing federal government work is everything we delivered to the federal government, they turned around and delivered to 400 million people. And that was really, what better calling can you have than to help the people helping the people? But that same mindset transitioned for us when we moved over to hospitals. It's about helping the people, helping the people. And, you know, sometimes the pillars in our lives themselves need that assistance to stand up and on their own 2 feet in a lot of ways and be prepared and feel that working with you as a company is strengthening their position everywhere. And that, you know, part of it is not trying to be diplomatic here, but you don't have to live in a customer forever. They have a need. You might just be passing through. So show up, deliver, and if there's no longer a need, don't create one. Don't just sit there and drain the resources. Get them to where they need to be and move on. They will remember you for that. They will come back to you just to see if you can do a thing because you did it, you got it done, and you didn't hang around to see if there was, some crumbs left over or if you could do something that someone else was doing well. And, that's not necessarily in line with a lot of the competitive business thinking that might exist out there today. But I think it's highly valuable to be able to come in, execute, and relieve stress and not be a burden for your customers.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We have something similar on my marketing consultancy where really the focus is staying as long as you bring value
Mhm.
and recognizing that some of our best client engagements, we successfully worked our way out of a job, right? We worked together from the origins of putting their marketing strategy and infrastructure in place, executing, in some cases, helping to kind of build and grow the team, and then getting them to a point where they're self sufficient. Right, every client is different as far as kind of what they need and for how long. But to your point, like that's what builds trust. That's what fosters the right relationships. And at the end of the day, all of this is about relationships. And right, if you make your clients successful and they remember you fondly, that does come back around. Not to mention it just feels better, right? Living as a with those kind of values. So we've talked about some of the transformations on the business side. I'd love to kind of zoom out and like hear a little bit more about you personally. Um, so would love to start by asking you, who was Sam as a child, and how d- how did that reflect kind of the career you've ultimately built for yourself?
I'd say I was a rascal. I still am. Uh, a social butterfly. I really like to be out and about and don't like spending too much time alone. So, being in these roles, maybe the open communication thing with my company is more for me than anyone else. And I just need to talk to people all the time, every day, and I love it. Um, but I played sports my whole life. I still play sports. I'm still very competitive. I still go out and compete. And I think that helps a lot to feed that nature and to bring it to the workplace and try to put and instill not a sense of urgency, but a fun competition, and not within the company, but with your competitors, with people that are out there. You want to beat them to the punch. We got something new. Is anybody else doing this? No. Let's be first. Let's get there. Let's get there fast. Um, and that's me not learning the lesson I talked about learning earlier. Uh, that sometimes you got to slow down, but going slow is tough. And I think I was like that as a kid too.
Any stories come to mind to share? Either, about, you said called yourself a rascal. Anything you learned from some of those as a kid?
I think one lesson I learned, and a former boss of mine taught me. He put it in. He didn't say it to me directly to shape the story a little bit differently, but it was in the employee handbook, and it said, "Never miss an opportunity to shut your mouth, because there is going to be one, and if you miss it, you might be missing a lot more than that opportunity. You might be missing something important that needed to be said, but you talked through it, or you didn't quite understand something and didn't realize it, and now you've changed someone's perception of you, or you really, really put your foot in your mouth." And I've eaten a lot of shoes, so that's a lesson that is not fun to learn. But down the line, when you have something to say, you're not sure if it's right, and you don't say it, and you on the other side of the conversation, you catch everything that you realize you missed or that you were going to be wrong about. Man, that feels like a powerful lesson. That feels like very transformative sometimes to just not say anything and listen.
I love that, and I think that's good advice for a lot of folks to think through. So I know we're nearing the end of our time, but as we wrap up today's conversation, can you let our listeners know what's the best way to get in touch?
Yeah, so sam.ziman at globalci.com. If you want to email me, you can go to my LinkedIn, which will be provided in the bio. And my work number and email are on there as well. Send me an invite. Let's connect. Let's talk.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you. I really enjoyed talking with you and talking about what has shaped and informed your leadership style and the different transitions that you've helped lead your organization through. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Great. Thank you so much, Natalie. I really enjoyed our time.
Same. And thank you to everyone that's listening. And if today's conversation sparked something for you, please pass this along to another leader, because we know that insights like this really fuel fresh thinking for all of us and help us drive real change in our company and in ourselves. So thanks again, Sam. And this has been another wonderful conversation on Shift and Thrive. I'll see you all next time. That's a wrap for this week's episode. For show notes and more, visit shiftandthrivepodcast.com. A special thank you to our sponsor, Magnitude Consulting, bringing you the thinking power of a growth consultancy and the getting it done power of a full-service marketing agency to help B2B companies fuel their growth. For more information on Magnitude and to get your complimentary transformation readiness assessment, visit magnitudeconsulting.com/getready. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next week.